All right, we're good to go. Good evening and welcome to the June 21st meeting of the Plymouth Township Zoning Hearing Board. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
of the United
of the
States,
States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin, we have a couple items to review. The Silver Spring Martin Luther School hearing is being continued until July 19th, and that's 512 Township Line Road. The 502 West Germantown Pike is also being continued until July 19th. And third is the Acevedo application for 1911 Sandy Hill Road. That one will be continued, but we have to have a motion on that prior to continuing because that was advertised. So we're going to continue that to a date certain of July 19th, assuming we have a motion to do so. So.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Angel Acevedo, 1911 Sandy Hill Road. We should open the hearing and immediately continue it. So I think the thing to do here is to entertain a motion to open the hearing and continue it to July 19th, 2021, 7:00 p.m.
Do we have such a motion?
I'll make a motion to open the hearing on 1911 Sandy Hill Road application and then continue it until 7 p.m. on July 19th.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. I think we do a unanimous vote, I guess. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tom, you're on mute.
Dominic, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. I see you
You're not
voted
the
aye.
first one, Dom.
The first case for tonight is 2904 Sheffield Drive, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Matthew Cooney. This is a request for a variance from section 1908.1 of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance to allow a storage shed that measures 12 feet by 24 feet, where a maximum of 12 feet by 12 feet is permitted. Again, this property is located at 2904 Sheffield Drive in the B, as in boy, residential zoning district. It's like we have Mr. Cooney on the line.
Yes, hello.
Mr. Cooney, are you represented by an attorney this evening?
No, it's just me.
Okay, great. No problem.
Paul, do you want to swear him in?
State your full name, please, for the record.
Hi, Matthew Cooney.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony about the given in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Cooney, would you explain to the board and any members of the public that might be on what it is you'd like to do?
Sure. Yeah, we would just like to build a shed, as stated, 12 by 24. There actually used to be I don't know, it was probably 11 by 10 or so shed a number of years ago when we bought the property. It was not quite as nice as we liked. We knocked it down a long time ago. And since that time, in the recent, 2-3 years ago, we built a fairly large garden, about 18 or so by 30 feet. And primarily, we want to be able to put things for the garden in there, but also some other storage and tools and just things of that sort. As you may have seen on the paperwork we submitted with this, we have a 24 by 24 garage, but currently no shed. So this basically would go directly behind it, half the size of the garage, 12 by 24, same width as the garage, but half as deep. So that's basically the request for our family to be able to build that shed.
All right, thank you. Ms. Pygott, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cooney, I was just wondering, would the shed be visible at all from the front of the property if you're looking at your front?
I wouldn't think so. So the garage, since it's 24 by 24, The pitch of the roof is such that it would, just by nature of this being only half as deep, I think the roof would not be as tall. And also as you go back in, if you go from the front of the property to the back of the property, it's downhill, including behind the garage. So I suspect for both of those reasons, it should not be any higher than the top of the
Not
garage.
higher than the garage. deep in the
Correct.
Garage.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So what kinds of things are you going to store in your tools? Is that what you want for your garden? Or-
Like I said, there may be some tools, but the tools would not be primarily the garden tools. That would just be, our own personal, hammers and saws and that type of thing. No, primarily, I think, like I said, we have a lot, tomato cages and other things that it would probably be as much off season as on season. The stuff that's out would come back out of the garden and be stored in there. And like I said, it would probably be a mix of things. I mean, we'd like to have some extra space in there for whatever else, because as you may know, it's myself, my wife, and our 2 boys, and we have a fair amount of stuff. And as much as you might clean out, it's nice to have something in addition to the garage, which is really meant to be a 2-car garage. It's a 2-car garage. We don't
Right.
always use it just for the car. So it's just some additional space. And like I said, for the garage and for tools. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I have.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cooney, how come you're looking to exceed the allowable dimensions? Like, what is it about what you need to store that you want to have 12 by 24?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, some of the stuff, basically our garage right now, we have things in there that we can't necessarily store outside. We actually have a little trampoline. Well, it's a fairly big trampoline for the kids in there. It's probably, I don't know, 10 feet in diameter. So there's some things in the garage that we really don't have anywhere else for, at least we can't purchase it currently because we have nowhere else for. And like I said, some of the fact that the garden, this is our 3rd year gardening, we're kind of, becoming little amateur gardeners and growing our own fruits and vegetables and stuff. And like I said, there's really no space for that, especially given the fact that we took down that storage shed that was 10 by 11 that used to be there from the previous owner. So
Okay.
there's no shed on the property. And it may be helpful to note that our property, as you come up Sheffield towards Germantown, the 2 streets diverge or get wider and wider. So ours is probably the largest square footage property on all of Sheffield. It may not be but it's close to half an acre, whereas you go further down Sheffield. So if you look at the layout of the property we submitted, there's plenty of space. I mean, as contrasted to maybe some other properties where they may not have such a large backyard. We have a very large backyard, and that's, a good part of the reason we have room to put in a garden. So.
Okay. Are you looking to include any utilities or anything in the?
No,
shed?
this would just purely be a shed. If it's allowable, maybe we put a light in there, but it probably not even that.
Okay. And just a last question. Are there any issues, concerns from your neighbors about your?
Not that I know. We've talked to our immediate neighbors on both sides. We have good relationships with them. They said go for it. They didn't have any issues at all. No.
Okay. All right. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Appreciate it.
Okay. Certainly.
Mr. Aprile.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armando. You're muted, Dean.
Yeah, I got you. Just one question. Do you have any water runoff issues with your neighbors or any swamp type effects from rain, that kind of thing?
No, we don't. There, from what I understand, in talking to both the neighbors, there used to be an actual lake or retaining something like that. They called it a lake with a wall that was behind all of the properties. I don't know how far up or down the street it went, but that was filled in. I don't know how many decades ago. This is just stuff I heard from the neighbors. But we really don't have any issues. We did have during the 2 hurricanes. So we moved in 2011. During Sandy and Irene, obviously a lot of us had issues, but other than that, no, there's no runoff issues, and certainly none that I would think, even in that case, would be made any worse by the shed, because like I said, it will be just behind the garage and really not in the path of anything. If anything, the open path from the front to the back of the property is on like the left-hand half or 2/3, and that will continue. That's not going to be impacted or blocked. So,
No further questions. Thank you.
sure.
Thank you. Just one question. Will the shed be used for any business activities?
Oh no, absolutely not. Just for the family.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Mr. Solicitor?
Just one or two. We may have said this, the height of the shed.
So I'm going to build it myself. I'll have someone pour the concrete. But I was planning on building myself. I'm fairly handy. I've built stuff before. I was going to ask if needed, is there a height limitation? I probably don't need to ask for any variance for that. I just need to ask what that is. What would the height limitation need to be?
12 feet.
Oh yeah, that should not be an issue at all.
Great. And I think you did mention, as I believe one of the zoning hearing board members asked you about installing utilities in the proposed shed. Did you say something about electric?
Well,
running
I would not,
electric?
I wasn't necessarily planning on anything, but just since you asked, I mean, at most, maybe like a light bulb. I mean, we don't really have any need for electric there. But I mean, certainly if it would require additional permits or anything, I would probably say we would not want to do that because we don't want to make this any more complicated than it needs to be. Would I need something like that just to run like a light, a wire from the garage to the shed for a light bulb?
Well, again, Dave Conroy might have to answer that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're just coming for an electrical permit or whatever with the building department.
Okay. I mean, I would say for now, would it be possible if I wanted to entertain that just to do that later? Like I can just start with a plain blank shed and just leave it like that?
I don't see an issue with that. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, that's fine with us. Like I said, we're not going to be occupying it or living in or anything. So yeah, that should be fine. Just a blank shed, so to speak.
Okay. Yep. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Conroy,
I don't have anything further. Thanks.
is there any member of the public here that would like to speak in support of this application? Is there any member of the public that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing no public comment, do we have a motion on this application?
I'll make a motion to grant a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended Article 19, Section 1908.1 to allow a 12 foot by 24 foot storage shed where a maximum of 12 feet by 12 feet is allowed at the 2904 Sheffield Drive in the B residential zoning district.
We have a second?
I'll
I
second that.
second
Or Denise can. Either one.
Okay, I second it.
Okay. Roll call vote, Ms. Pygott,
In favor.
Mr. Daly,
In favor?
Mr. Aprile,
Favor.
Mr. Ramondo.
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck, Mr. Cooney.
Thank you very much. Myself and my family, our two boys especially, appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Cooney.
Welcome.
You have beautiful property. I went by it the other day, so good luck with it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank
And you
you.
can take down the zoning posting now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, my man.
It is nice. Our next and this final case for this evening is 1103 to 1113 Ridge Pike. Mr. Sander.
Bear with me first, unmute. This is the application of 1103 Ridge Partners LLC, care of E. Kahn, that's K-A-H-N Development. This is an application for variances as follows. To allow business identification signage for single property occupied by one tenant measuring 310 square feet, to allow business identification sign not located on a street frontage, and to allow the proposed wayfinding sign. These are from section 1601.c and section 1601.c3 of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance. The property is located at 1103-1113 Ridge Pike in the commercial zoning districts.
I see Mr. Lewis is here tonight.
I am. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a couple months. I haven't been in front of you all in a couple months, so I'm happy to be back. I represent 1103 Ridge Partners LLC. They are the applicants this evening in this matter. They are also the owners of the property that we've spoken about, 1103 and 1113 Ridge Pike. All of that probably sounds familiar to a number of you on this board because we've actually been here on this property a couple of times with respect to this property. In fact, I think it's twice that we've been here. Before jumping right into our application, if I could just, for purposes of the record, like to mark a few things. I have sent our exhibits to Mr. Conroy electronically, but I also have them ready to share on my screen if the board would permit me to do that as we get more into it. The first are really procedural in matter. Exhibit A1, I'd like to mark a copy of the application that brings us here this evening. Exhibit A2, I'd like to mark a copy of the deed to 1103 Ridge Pike. Exhibit A3, I'd like to mark a copy of the deed to 1113 Ridge Pike. And then if permissible, I'd like to share my screen with what I will start in terms of applicant's exhibit A4. Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Mattioni. So what you should see on the screen now is a Google aerial image, and you can see the red pin identifying 1103 Ridge Pike. And if you can see my cursor, I will generally outline the property that's the subject of this proceeding, which is 1103 and 1113. There is construction to the rear, which used to be a portion of 1113 Ridge Pike, and I'll get to that piece in just a minute. As I mentioned, we have been here on this project twice before. I won't recap all of that for the board, but I think a little bit of summary will help and maybe reintroduce the project. I think there's at least maybe one person here that wasn't party to those applications before. So as I mentioned, this is an aerial image that shows the entirety of the property. Some of that construction of this project is already ongoing and visible in that image. Back in October of 2017, we actually filed the first application to this board. We were seeking variances at that time necessary to redevelop these two properties in conjunction. At the time, they were just generally known as the 7-Up bottling plant, which was on 1103, and the Bimbo Bakery on 1113 Ridge. Each of those buildings, as you may recall, was about 175,000 square feet. They were rather archaic old buildings that were generally mostly vacant, had been put to some differing uses over the years. Bimbo is still occupying a portion of the bakery, but certainly not utilizing the entirety of it. What I will change the image to here, I can do this quickly. Apologies, there's the deeds. Aerial image, and here we go. This is what I have identified as applicant's exhibit A5. It's actually the zoning plan for phase 1 of this project. And that project was the construction of what I noted on the aerial image. And that was to take that rear portion of 1113 Ridge, and redevelop it for a distribution facility for Bimbo. Bimbo would vacate its front building entirely because it was no longer using it as a bakery. It was really just a distribution facility. And we were going to build them a modern distribution facility to the rear. That project would take principal access off of Academy. And you'll recall that we've also entered into an agreement to extend Academy with the county. And agreed to do that extension for them. And there were a host of other improvements associated with that project, all of which necessitated really a litany of variances because of Academy and because of the existing nonconformities on the front two pieces of this project. That project went through land development, and as you saw on that aerial image, the Bimbo Bakery is under construction. In fact, I believe it's now completely occupied by Bimbo. And in fact, the Bimbo Bakery facility, as I'll talk about in a minute, has now been demolished nearly entirely. The second phase of this project really was figuring out what to do with these two buildings, the old 7-Up bottling building on 1103 and then the Bimbo Bakery. What I'll bring up is applicant's exhibit A6. So At one point, we believed that what we could do was to repurpose those two buildings. 1103, we were looking at doing a distribution facility, and then the 1113, the Bimbo Bakery facility. All kinds of ideas over the year and a half, 2 years we were in that process. We thought we could retain and redevelop that structure. At one point, we even believed that Bimbo was interested in making that their U.S. headquarters. So we had a number of different opportunities with that facility that we were investigating. And then we returned to you in 2019 with respect to that aspect of the project. Again, we were seeking variances at that time, really to address the Goliaths of these buildings and how they sat on the property and how we could redevelop those parking fields. Because you'll recall, we were talking about a shared access, but we had to provide parking, we had to provide loading, and a host of variances were necessary to try and accommodate all of that. This board ultimately granted that relief as well. And we proceeded into the formal development process. While we were proceeding into that process, our current tenant for 1103 came to light. And during the land development process, we actually modified our plan pretty significantly and took it through to final approval. That plan is a large file, so it takes me a second for it to come up on my screen. And in the end, what we proposed and what we ultimately obtained land development approval for was a proposal to actually demolish the entirety of that Bimbo facility, completely redevelop the former 7-Up bottling facility, including actually reducing that building down to about 105,000 square feet from its original, which was nearly 170,000 square feet. And at the time when we were going through land development, most people had an idea who the tenant was going to be because of the quite unique arrangement out front, but we weren't able to reveal that name at the time. We obviously now have that ability. And this is an Amazon distribution facility, an e-commerce fulfillment center and distribution facility. So we took this plan all the way through land development. It has been fully approved. It has been recorded, and construction actually is nearly complete, the redevelopment. That included obviously the removal of the Bimbo Bakery facility, the removal of a portion of the building out front, and a host of other improvements to facilitate this development. It's quite an interesting project in terms of the coordination of the different aspects of the use, and we'll get into that a little bit tonight. But this project now is nearing completion, and we are here this evening seeking relief with respect to signage for this project. As I mentioned, being a fulfillment center, if anybody is unfamiliar with how these operate, it's as I call it, a unique logistical ballet, one that Amazon has obviously perfected and able to run quite efficiently. But to do that, as you'll hear tonight, everyone needs to be in their appropriate place. You have large trucks that must come into this center to bring the materials into the distribution facility. So those large vehicles have to access the appropriate portions of the building site. You then have the employees who are going to work in the facility that need to be appropriately directed to their large parking fields. You then also have employees that are coming in to grab delivery vans, and they have to park in their appropriate locations as well. And lastly, you then have those delivery vans that are all going to be heading out onto the roadways, making distributions to your house, my house, everyone else. And those have to exit through appropriate locations and re-enter through appropriate locations. All of this requires coordination for it to work properly, and also to avoid conflicts. And lastly, this facility also includes an Amazon hub. An Amazon hub is a portion of the facility that actually allows direct customers to receive their packages at this location. At times and different locations, that is a manned facility. You walk in and you deal with somebody directly. At other times, that is through locker style facilities where you can arrange to have your packages placed in a locker. You receive codes, you go in and you grab your packages. So again, you now have that customer traffic also having to mingle with the remainder of the traffic, all of which requires direction. And I think, as you'll see this evening, the signs proposed for this facility, they are not superfluous. This is not an attempt to raise some beacon and make people aware of Amazon. I think people are aware of Amazon. The signs here really are more concerned with that coordination of the various components of our use. If I can, I'll pull up. This is applicant's exhibit A8. And this is the set of signage plans that were submitted with our application.
Rob, what was that? What was A7?
I'm sorry, A7 was the recorded land development plan.
Oh, okay.
My apologies, Mr. Sander. I didn't identify it. I just put it up on the screen, but it's A7 is the recorded land development plan for this project.
Excellent, thank you. And A8 is?
A8 is the signage plans, which are 15 sheets, identical to what was submitted with the application.
Got it.
The sign plan, which I'm sure the board has had an opportunity already to look at, they were prepared by Fast Signs. They include a locational plan. That locational plan identifies each of the locations of each of the proposed signs. And then there's individual specification sheets for each of those proposed signs. You will note that the vast majority of the signs included in this application are what I think anybody would call directional or wayfinding. They're intended simply to direct the various types of vehicular traffic to the correct entrance point from the front or in and around the site as well. There's a total actually of 18 of those various directional signs or wayfinding signs. And they range in size from 1.5 square feet to 20 square feet. The messaging on those includes anything from yard rules to loading zone, to drop off, to customer pickup. So there are a host of different signs, as I kind of scroll through a few of these for you, that are simply intended to direct either employees, deliveries, or customers in and around the site. Again, because it's obviously very important that everybody gets to where they need to be in an efficient manner, and there are no unnecessary conflicts with those vehicular traffic. These are very typical signs, I think, that you might see in a flex development or an industrial park or any other distribution facility. But because this project is technically within the commercial zoning district in Plymouth Township, there are signs that really aren't addressed at all by your code. So therefore, out of an abundance of caution, instead of just seeking permits and having long discussions with Mr. Conroy about why we should be permitted to have these, we put them in our application and are seeking your approval this evening for those. It obviously helped that we knew we were coming in front of you anyway for the 4 signs that I would say are not wayfinding per se, but more our business identification. 2 of them kind of straddled the line. And I'll detail those for you pretty quickly. The first of the kind of more traditional business identification sign. This is a sign that's proposed to be located right on our front facade facing out to Ridge Pike. This is about 152 square feet when measured in accordance with your ordinance, because as you, I'm sure, have heard from a number of applicants over the years, you have to draw a box around any of the letters and the logo. So as you can imagine, even though these are channel letters attached to the facade of that new building, you have to draw a box around that, which then ends up with a lot of dead space. That's not really advertising space, but it is sign area under your ordinance, thus resulting in 152 square foot sign area. Your ordinance, as I think you see more commonly in the C commercial district, anticipates Smaller businesses located much closer to the road frontage, not necessarily requiring signage of this nature. So again, I think our use being a bit unique for the district is partially responsible for the size of the signage that we're looking at this evening. The second of those wall signs and business identification sign is the sign you see on the screen here, which is the Amazon hub. This is facing, it would be facing really the Bimbo bakery facility that used to exist. So facing the parking lot, it doesn't technically face out to Ridge Pike. And this is really intended, obviously, to identify the hub, which is the only real interaction with customers at this facility. So it's to identify where customers can pick up and drop off packages themselves. So very important that customers know what part of this facility really is for them to access. This is about a 98 square foot sign on this facade. The remaining two that I would say aren't strictly wayfinding are monument signs. One located at our main Ridge Pike entrance, and then a second one located along Academy Drive. The relief here is principally due to the fact that Academy Drive is not actually a current public road. So your ordinance does not account for or permit business identification signage unless you have a quote unquote frontage. And since it's not a public road, it doesn't constitute a frontage. Although obviously it is critical to us, the access point there and directing traffic into our site in that location. Again, we have one of those being proposed at our primary access point and the other along Academy. You can see that these signs still really are intended more to direct traffic than be simply advertising. You can see that each of these signs really are the start of the directing of traffic through the site and to their proper location. It's also worth noting, and I think I'll come back to this if I can before you're completely tired of hearing from me. With this application, we have consolidated 1103 and 1113, and I've just for purposes of your review, I don't think it needs to be made a part of the record, but this is the street view image of 1103 before the building was partially demolished. And what you can see is there are existing monument signs. There's the Kempf building materials sign, which was a rather large freestanding sign out front for 1103. There was also building facade signage at that time. And then there was also the Bimbo Bakery's freestanding monument sign along Ridge Pike. As part of this process, part of this application, those two freestanding signs will in fact be removed. So there is a net effect with respect to this application that we will be removing those as well. And the one last thing I would like to note before I call my witness this evening, I do need to note, Mr. Sander, one correction or update to the sign plans. It doesn't affect the relief that we're seeking this evening, but I think it's important to note that. In our signage plans, it indicates that these two, and if I can come back to this, it indicates that our two monument signs up here are unlit. And in fact, when we got into more detail with the tenant, with Amazon, and their particular sign companies, we were advised that in fact these will be internally illuminated signs. We do not require any relief to have these internally illuminated. It doesn't change any of the relief that we are seeking, but I know that this board, if and when you're inclined to grant relief, nearly always incorporates all of the exhibits and expects compliance with the exhibits. I didn't want to end up being in seeking a permit, hopefully someday, from Dave, and he would note unlit and our sign permit shows internally illuminated and there would be a conflict. So I would like to note for the record that in fact the two monument signs that we are proposing, if the board is inclined to grant our application this evening, would in fact be internally illuminated. So my apologies for that error. So just summarizing quickly, so in all, we've got about 105,000 square foot facility here involving numerous different components, blending trucks, employees, delivery vans, customers. Given the unique nature of the use, the unique nature really of the property vis-a-vis the access to Academy, as well as the overall non-conforming nature really of these prior uses and that building, we believe that our requests for relief this evening for wayfinding and identification signage are relatively reasonable, if not modest, given the size and scope of this facility. I do have with me this evening two gentlemen who have been patiently listening to me as you have been. One is Peter Kilty. Peter is with Econ Development Corp., the developer of this project, and he can speak to any questions you may have about construction and so forth on this project. But we also have with us Dan Fuchs. He is the Senior Director of Entitlements for Amazon. So obviously intimately knowledgeable about the operations of Amazon and their needs for all of this wayfinding signage. Again, Peter, with respect to the day-to-day construction of the project and the interface between my clients, the developer, and Amazon. So unless the board has any questions for me, I would love to have both Peter and Dan sworn in.
I do have a question for you, Rob.
Sure.
Do you have somebody from the owner?
Peter Kilty can represent both 1103 Ridge Partners as well as Econ Development Corp.
Okay. All right.
They're related entities.
Wanted to make sure we have that covered.
Yep.
Now have your witnesses sworn in, please.
State your, can we stop sharing, Mr., so I can see the people?
Sure. Sorry, Paula.
I'm sorry about that. Yep. Who will be sworn? I'm looking for them on the screen.
Peter Kilty and Dan Fuchs. On my screen, they're lower left.
Yep, I see him. Okay. Mr. Fuchs, please state your full name and spell it for the record.
Daniel Fuchs,
Spell it out.
DANIEL-FUCHS.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the giving this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. And Peter, state your full name for the record, please, and spell it.
Peter Kilty, PETERKILTY.
Thank you, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the giving this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
If the board would permit me, I know you've been patient with my long opening. I'd like to try and ask Dan a few questions and ask him if he could to adopt my opening rather than necessarily have him walk through that entire process again. Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes,
Great.
yeah.
So Dan, you've already stated your name for the record. Can you please identify your business address and with whom you're currently employed?
Yes, my office is at 1362 Bryant Court in Horsham, Pennsylvania, and I am employed by Amazon, AmazonServices.com.
And what's your title currently with Amazon?
Senior Manager, AMZL Entitlements.
And are you familiar with the development of the property located at 1103 to 1113 Ridge Pike that we're speaking of this evening?
I am.
And am I correct that you're also familiar with Amazon and their operational needs for a e-commerce fulfillment center such as that we're discussing this evening?
Yes.
And am I correct that you are also familiar with the exhibits that I presented this evening? Most importantly, exhibits A7 and A8, the land development plan and the signage plan.
Yes.
Dan, you heard my long-winded opening this evening, presenting various facts and conclusions to the board with respect to our application, which is seeking dimensional variances to permit installation of certain signs for that facility. If you were called to testify tonight to the facts and conclusions that I have presented, would you testify to those facts and conclusions as I have presented them this evening?
Yes, I would.
Any changes or corrections?
No.
Okay, so Dan, in your opinion, based on your experience as well as your knowledge of the operational needs of Amazon, Are the proposed signs that we presented this evening necessary for Amazon to properly and efficiently and quite frankly, safely operate its use at this property?
Yes, they are appropriate.
And do you believe that the request for relief and the signage that we presented represent the minimum necessary to do so?
Yes.
Do you believe that the proposed signs would have a detrimental impact on the public health, safety, or welfare?
No, I do not.
And do you believe that the proposed signs would impair the appropriate use or enjoyment of the adjoining properties?
No, they would not.
In fact, do you believe that the proposed signs are consistent with those in the neighborhood or on the adjoining properties?
Yes, I do.
That's all that I want to do with Mr. Fuchs. I know from experience that it's much better to allow this board to ask their questions than it is for me to try and anticipate all the questions you may have. So again, I present Dan Fuchs and Peter Kilty, and I think between the three of us, we can certainly answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Ms. Pygott, do you have any questions of either of the witnesses or Mr. Lewis?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question about the frontage sign, the Amazon sign. That's going to be on the front of the building, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And you want me to bring that up on the screen?
And yeah, that's going to be an illuminated sign, right? Yeah,
That's correct.
at night. And is it going to lie flush against the building or will it be any elevation? It looks like it's flush against the building. Is that how it's?
There, if you look to the right here, you can see that it's relatively flush. They are technically channel letters. They are individual letters mounted on the facade of the building. So there is some depth to the sign, but it is not a projecting sign per se. So it is mounted directly onto the.
It's not elevated at all, right?
No, that's correct.
So will the only lit signs be the monument signs and that frontage sign? Are they the only ones that'll be lit?
That's correct. The remainder of the signs are really visible simply through on-site lighting, but they're not internally. None of the others are internally illuminated, just the monument signs and the wall signs.
So Denise, the only other one is the Amazon hub that Mr. Lewis had brought up on the screen earlier. As
The
well.
one facing the back of the parking lot.
Correct.
That'll be,
Yep.
That's right, yeah. And that'll be similar to the sign in the front, like,
Smaller in size, but yes, very, very similar with the channel letters, as you can see to the right on Mr. Lewis's screen.
yes, okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Daly? Did we lose Mr. Daly? No, he's there.
No, he's there.
Oh,
On
you
mute.
did it.
He was contemplating.
Yeah, I was. I was actually reading my notes. Thanks for the reminder. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Have there been any issues expressed by any of the neighboring properties, car dealerships or anything across the street? I wouldn't.
Oh, and Mr. Daly, it's interesting, Mr. Kilty made me aware of something I didn't know earlier. Typically, Plymouth Township has some pretty strict requirements in terms of construction, hours that it's permissible to perform construction because you're considerate, obviously, of your neighbors. Here, there were some timeline challenges to bring this project online, and a request was made to the township to extend those hours, and that was done, which we very much appreciate. And it was done under the condition that nobody complain about, if there were any complaints about the hours of construction, that we would be required to go back to the strict hours. And thus far, we've had no complaints whatsoever. So.
Okay.
And Mr. Daly, we tried to make peace with everybody who was around us. We do own the enterprise lot that abuts Ridge Pike,
Right.
with the exception of the Conacelli building. We built and developed the facility for Bimbo Bakery. So obviously I had a lot of interface with the Covanta trash to steam plant along the way. We do some work with Miller Brothers. So I think we've all been playing nice in the sandbox. There could be some people who want to throw rocks at me, but I haven't been hit yet. So no, I think we've been okay and done our best to be good neighbors.
Okay, great. Thanks. Will the displays, will the display on the illuminated channel letter signs be dynamic at all, or will it just be the illuminated letter static?
Just
showing
static
Amazon?
illumination. Yeah.
Okay, and how intense will that illumination be? Wouldn't
I
affect
think-
the drivers or anything, would it?
No, I don't think any more than the car dealership, specifically since we sit so far back. The lightest color we have is that Amazon blue that you see.
Mhm.
Most of the rest of the signs are actually pretty monotone, just based on other facilities that we've built.
Okay. And the Amazon hub sign, exactly where is that visible from? Is that going to be at the back of the parking lot to indicate where people are to go to pick up items, or is it on Ridge Pike? My
Yeah, so-
recollection is one will be on the front and one will be visible from one direction on Ridge Pike, I think.
If you were standing in the old Bimbo Bakeries facility or that
Mhm.
parking lot that was
Right.
demolished out, that's where you would most predominantly see the Amazon hub sign.
Okay.
Where Rob has his cursor right there, that is a visitor and associate parking lot for normal cars, and it's separate from the vans. So if somebody were to come in off of Ridge Pike, park their car, Amazon with an abundance of safety, and Dan can kind of speak to that. They just want to make sure people find that location to pick up their package so they're not wandering around any parts of the facility. So that's the true reason for that Amazon hub, to really jump and make sure people are aware of where to go.
Okay, thanks. I'm also just personally looking for clarification on one of the terms that I saw in the application. Talked about flex drivers. Are they the kind of drivers Amazon used to use with the people with their private cars doing the delivery, or will they be driving Amazon vans?
Yeah, the flex drivers typically will be driving their own personal vehicles.
Okay, and will that have any impact on traffic going in and out?
No, there are very few flex drivers, and they're in the afternoon, before the afternoon peak of the surrounding traffic.
Okay, those questions weren't related to signage, but I was just curious. So thank you very much for all your answers, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Mr. Aprile.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lewis, a couple of quick questions, just for clarification here. How many signs are we putting up? Do we have a number? I don't see a list of all the signs.
We
see
do. So there are 18 wayfinding signs when you go through that exhibit A8. So there's 18 of those total. And here I'll scroll through. You recall these.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to see all the pictures. I just wanted a quick list.
Yeah, there's 18 wayfinding signs. There are 2 wall signs and 2 monument signs.
And Rob, I think maybe on the first page, if I'm not mistaken, there may be a list on the left-hand side. Yeah, I believe that kind of calls out what the signage is and what it signifies.
Tenant sign faced legend.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that. I apologize. I don't know if it has the official number like Mr. Lewis said.
Rob, you said, so that's 22 signs?
That's correct.
And
Total.
Total square foot of all signs?
So I've only calculated the total square feet of the wall signs plus the monument signs. And that was I believe it's 301 square feet total.
310 or 309?
I'm sorry, 310. Thank you. Dyslexia kicking back in.
So the wayfinding signs don't need a variance?
We've asked for a variance out of an abundance of caution just because they aren't addressed in the ordinance. So we would simply ask for a variance to allow wayfinding signs consistent with exhibit A8 if the board were inclined to grant that relief.
Does A8 give us a total of what they add up to in square footage?
I don't believe that we have a total number, but if you would permit me a few moments, I'm sure I could reach that calculation for you.
We're talking about 18 wayfinding signs. They're internal signs to point you where to go, which building, which
Correct.
driveway, stop, go, whatever, right? And then 2 wall signs, 2 monument signs, one's by each park, the driveway to come into the building, right?
That's correct.
2 monument signs, the 2 wall signs. Those 4 signs will be illuminated?
Correct.
Do they get dimmed at night? Do they stay real bright at night?
They stay relatively lit because again, this is a 24-hour operation. You do have vehicles coming and going, at various times of night. So we do need to have those lit.
I'm not saying that they can't be lit, but do they dim? Like for people sleeping, just in case people can see them?
I'm not sure whether or not that's capable of being done. We would certainly investigate it if it's necessary to reduce the
We have
lighting.
the
at
sign
night.
guys here, right? The sign guys could tell us.
No, I'm sorry, Dominic, we do not have the sign guys on, but like Rob, Mr. Lewis said, we can investigate it. I know it's Amazon's intent and in other facilities, they've kept them bright and on and full throughout the night, just because the freight and the LTL drivers that deliver the packages, they come overnight. So just making sure that everybody can clearly see where they're going.
Monument signs are road level, so that's not a big deal. I'm thinking of the ones on the walls.
Yeah,
Is there
and
any
then-
neighborhoods that could see these signs?
No, that's
Probably
the best part about this, Mr. April. I'm going to pull this back up real quick, just so we can see the Google aerial image. Our only facilities surrounding us. So those where it says Beambo Bakery on this, that's actually closer to the road than these signs will be. But all you're talking about here are Conacelli dealerships all along Ridge Pike, and then the SEPTA, and then the large public auto auction. I mean, there are no residential structures anywhere in sight from this facility, which is wonderful for everybody.
Okay, so we have 310 square foot for 4 signs, and we don't know what the other 18 signs measure yet, right?
I don't have that number. I apologize.
Okay, can we get that included in the final, just so it's on record?
Sure. Be happy to provide that to Mr. Sander and or Mr. Conroy.
No more questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Armando?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, how many employees are we talking about as far as like pulling their cars in and parking?
The facility will have approximately 120 to 150 employees, and those are approximate numbers.
Okay. How are we handling the Ridge Pike access? I remember from the previous meetings, it was said that Ridge Pike wouldn't be the main flow for trucks and cars. Is that still the case?
Peter, do you want to address the dispersion of traffic a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave, and good question. So off of Ridge Pike, the associates, Rob, if you go to the lot directly in front of the building or to the right of the warehouse.
Yep.
So that is your primary associate car parking, normal car parking lot. So any visitor handicap spaces will be there. Where Rob is circling right now, that is the larger van lot. So that van lot is not accessible from the primary Ridge Pike access. There is one road coming off of Ridge Pike just to the north of Rob's cursor. Sorry, Rob, I'm making it man white. Yeah, so that is the only entrance for the vans to ultimately come back in off of Ridge Pike. From an operational standpoint, the vans will leave the large parking lot, go into the van queuing lane, which Rob is outlining, and go underneath the canopy to be loaded. Then all of the vans will leave out Academy Drive so that they can get out to an actual light. They'll either go right to go to 476 or take a left at the light to go on to Ridge Pike and service their route. So I think Amazon, from a logistics standpoint, has done a pretty good job at making sure that the circulation stays off of Ridge Pike as much as possible from an ingress and egress standpoint, almost to the point where we really only have one access point directly off the site for the vans to come and go.
So I guess the main concern here is left turns. So are they going to be making left turns off of Ridge and left turns onto Ridge coming out of the parking lot? Because it gets a little chaotic there with the,
Agreed.
you know what I mean? Is that something that was addressed, or is there a future red light involved? Or, I mean, it just sounds like if the usage gets to a certain point, there's going to be a lot of
Yeah, Mr. Raimondo, one of the main goals here, both with the distribution facility when we did the relocation of Beambo and for Amazon, was to make sure that the truck traffic and the van traffic principally was coming out to the signalized intersection, which, as you know, is also scheduled to be completely redone by the county and or PennDOT. So that was the primary goal. So what we have done is tried to minimize the amount of traffic utilizing, our main access points on Ridge and limiting the amount of traffic that comes and goes from those access points. limiting that really to returns of those vans coming back in the after, after they're done their routes, and employee standard customer vehicles, all of which our traffic study that was submitted with land development was showing was actually quite a substantial reduction in daily trips compared to if you had filled these two buildings with standard either office or manufacturing facility uses. And that was something that we actually went into in quite some depth during the land development process, was that in the end, this results in a net reduction in overall traffic for these properties.
And Mr. Raimundo, it's a good question too. I just wanted to point out directly parallel to the actual building, you'll see there's 6 little clusters. They each have 20 written in them. So the vans, they go into these queuing spots, they get loaded, and then when they go distribute out, that is the only point of actual access when they're loaded to leave for their routes for the day. So they're instructed, since the 18-wheeler traffic's not during the day and is off hours, to go back through the loading dock and make that left-hand turn onto Academy Drive. So Amazon's very particular that they don't want, vans making the right into the larger lot. They'd much prefer the streamline of traffic going out to Academy Drive and actually going out on the routes. And then when the vans come back in at the day, they can use the other various entrances to do so.
And can they make the left off of Ridge to get back in, or are they? I just have a vision of like 6 blue vans trying to make a left. And
recall that this Ridge Pike, the cross section of Ridge Pike is also being changed throughout the entirety of this stretch to be a 5-lane cross section. So unlike today, because I drive this road almost every single day, today, if you want to make a left into any of these businesses, you're blocking a lane of traffic. This entire section of Ridge Pike is being made eventually into a 5-lane cross section. So there will be a center left turn lane. So in the future, if somebody is making a left, or if multiple vehicles are making lefts at the same time, they won't be blocking traffic as they do today.
Okay.
And Mr. Raimundo, I don't want to speak for Dan and Amazon too much directly, but Industrial Way, we also have a primary access off of there. So that's where I see more frequently the vans coming back in off of the Industrial Way access point, or subsequently making a right turn to get onto Ridge Pike out of there.
Might making a left turn.
It can
all
be.
depends. Yeah, all depends what.
Also, like the right turn doesn't seem like a big deal. I come home that way. I come I guess it would be east, and there's one of those businesses has a bunch of employees back near Industrial Way, and I just see them all trying to bang that left out in the middle of rush hour traffic, and it's almost like on a nightly basis where I'm going to see somebody get T-boned. You know what I mean? Because people get
Yeah, and
I just don't want to see that. That's my
right. And one of the things we're very safety conscious, which is one of the reasons why we have the associates separate from the vans and the line hauls. But the other point about during rush hour traffic, our vans are intentionally put onto the road not during rush hour, so that we are not increasing the amount of traffic during peak traffic hours surrounding our facilities. So these vans will be coming back, and they're all not going to be coming back at the same time. They'll be coming back based upon the number of packages they delivered and the time they left the facility. But they'll be coming back after evening rush hour and leaving after the morning rush.
What about the employees?
Employees, the same thing. We do not have the employees coming in waves during the peak hours. And typically, a large number of our employees are working overnight to unload the trucks and to prepare the packages for the vans to arrive in the morning, and then they will leave the facility, and we'll have more coming in middle of the day and then leaving at late evening.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question, the big Amazon sign, the main Amazon sign. I mean, how far back is that? Do you have any idea from Ridge Pike?
Here, I will pull this up again for you, Mr. Mattioni. I'll give you a sense of that. I'm zooming in before I share, because once I share, it will make you nauseous if I try. So here we go. Now I will share. There we go. So again, I have zoomed, what you see on the screen is applicant's exhibit A7. And so giving you the numbers here from Ridge Pike, you've got 3 separate 26-foot drive aisles. So you've got 78 feet there, plus you have 5 different parking stalls, each of which are 18 feet. So nearly another 100 feet there. So you're just shy of 200 feet off of Ridge Pike by the time you get to the facade of the building. So a pretty substantial setback off of Ridge Pike.
Is that sign on an angle then, on the angled part of the building? Right
Peter?
there?
Right
It
here,
is on, it's on a flat part of the building and it is 403 feet from the retaining wall frontage. So then you have a sidewalk and a curb as well. So sorry, I was scrambling to get my CAD file pulled up here, but that's exact for you. And it is on a flat frontage of the building. If you've driven by the facility, it would be directly over the glass storefront that was just installed.
Right. Drove by about a week ago. And I don't know, it just seemed to me like it's pretty far back and it's not even going to be that visible if you're driving down the Pike.
No, I think Rob made a pretty good point and Dan can speak to it. I think at least the Amazon facilities that I've had the pleasure to work in, it's not like an in-your-face big sign. It's more directional. Here we are. They are directing, select folks who use the Amazon hub, either the lockers or the in-person pickup, drop off. But even that operation is more seldom versus the packages going to homes, as I'm sure we're all familiar with. So yeah, the intent was just to make sure that no vans are stopping anywhere, no associates are wondering where to go. It's just very clean and clear on how people get to the places they're parking their cars or loading the vans.
Right. I mean, that gets to why I think the monument sign is probably a little more important, because that's what you'll actually see up on Ridge Pike, and that's what's directing you into the site, much more than the sign up on the wall that's pretty far back.
Mhm.
Okay. I have no further questions. Mr. Sander,
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Conway,
No further questions. Thank you.
is there anybody from the public who would like to speak in support of this application? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in opposition to this application? I see no public comment. Do we have a motion on this application?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance requested on ordinance number 342 as amended in Article Section 1601.c and 1601.c3 to allow the 310 square feet business identification signs and the on-site directional ways signs.
And it's very specific in the application, so I think if we're okay with the application, then we can get by without specifically stating the exact square footage because it's in the application itself. Mr. Floyd, I wanted to make sure you understand that it's.
Yeah, I was
specific
more
in the
concerned
application.
about how much over we really were, that's all.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like we're that much over.
And it's a really large site, so anyway. Okay, with that, I hope that I didn't muddy up the motion, but do we have a second?
I don't need any help.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Sander, are you okay with the motion?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's have a vote. Ms. Pygott,
I'm in favor.
Mr. Daly,
In favor.
Mr. Aprile,
Favor.
Mr. Armando.
In favor.
The chair votes in favor, and I do think that this is a vast improvement as to what was there. It just, the 7-Up building was awful, and I think it'll be a vast improvement and good for the township. So good luck, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mattioni.
And-
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And
Thanks,
Mr.
Rob
Mattioni,
Lewis.
Dan, off
Mr.
the record.
Mattioni, after
Oh.
we knocked the Beanbo Bakeries, the old building down, I can reassure you that it was a vast improvement from what was there based on.
Looks good.
So, thank you for everything, guys. We
Dave,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
there's one question coming to you, Dan. Hold on. Yeah.
No, I was just asking off the record, is there a lot of good sales tonight? Today is Prime Day and I got to get over.
I hope that there are, and I thank you very much for your orders.
Okay.
I
I
saved
didn't know that you
$10
could
today.
pick them
Thank you.
up. Okay,
I got my delivery today.
okay.
I was gonna say, Denise, if you didn't see Dan clicking during the meeting, he was.
Oh, he was ordering his stuff then.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
all.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
I guess we are adjourned, so.
So we'll see you Monday. See you in a week.
No, we want to see Mike. We want
I'll
to
see
see
you
Mike
guys
next
next
Monday.
Monday.
Like one day
Not Mike.
for
Mike's
pre.
working.
Yeah, he continues to build his debt to us.
Exactly.
Yep,
I will
do.
convey to the council, Kaplan and Musso and Gundlach, that the board's preference is to continue to work to hold the hearings via Zoom and ask if they have any objection to that.
Okay.
What do we expect Monday? Are there going to be, are they calling, they're still in the witness phase?
Yeah,
or-
they're still in witnesses. I don't have it in front of me where exactly we left off, but
Just ballpark. I mean.
it's got to be
witnesses-
down to, I
The
mean, Kaplan's
traffic
gotta be
guys
down to
were on, right?
one or two witnesses left to rebuttal.
He's never going to stop if we don't let him. He's going to, I'm just saying.
But the longer he takes, the longer his client doesn't get to move his project forward.
That's true.
If he's denied, he can't get it. He can't file an appeal. And if he's granted, he can't get a shovel in the ground or defend the township's appeal. So
He made it clear that he wants to get as much into the testimony for the appeal anyway. So he's just going to keep
no,
shoveling.
let him go. Let him go. Honestly,
Back at lunch, right?
we're talking about the use. We're talking about a special exception, and
All right, yeah, I get it. I was fair to say that.
We're starting at 7 PM, right?
All meetings are at 7.
Wonderful. All right, guys, have a good week. I'll see you next
Right.
Monday.
See you next
too.
Monday.
Thanks,
guys.
Alex.
Take care.
Have a good
Night.
one, guys.
Good night.
Thanks all. Bye.
Night.